Okay, so I think this one will be a shorter quiz. We're going to make this part 7B because you do need to know more about Gregor Mendel, anyways. Because without his decisions and his things that he did, without the fundamentals of genetics, we don't really understand how the origins of life can continue the way it is. So, origins of life will be next time. I'm just going to do like a 5-question quiz with this one. You need to get 3 out of 5. You'll be fine. So, genetics is the field of biology devoted to the understanding of characteristics from parents to offspring. So, Gregor Mendel was a monk in Austria that came up with the idea of genetics. Well, what he did basically, he looked at heredity, which is the transmission of characteristics from different pea plants throughout his gardening, and he wrote them all down and he created this system of genetics. So he observed different characteristics. These different characteristics were height, flower position, pod color, appearance, flower color, seed color, different things like that. So pollination, so animals mate by sexual reproduction, having a female copulate or have sex with a male, and the passing of genetic material between the two, mother and female, or female and male of the species, creates the offspring. The combination of those will pass on their genetics or heredity, their traits, to that offspring. The combination. Now, he used pollination, which is how we mate plants. So there's self-pollination and there's cross-pollination. So taking the pollen from one plant and putting it with another is going to be cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the only thing that can be done, or one thing that can be done in plant life. You take the pollen from the stigma and then transfer it to the same stigma of the same plant. So, and then this shows you your male and female structures inside of the plant. All right, so cross-pollination means that you're going from one to another. That will create an offspring that is a hybrid. So all human beings are hybrids. Now, Mendel experimented with purebreds as well. So he noticed that purebreds will always have the same trait in these pea plants. That means they are pure. They will always have the same trait. Hybrids will be sometimes different. So parental generation would be P1, and he moves on to F1, which is your first offspring generation. So as he goes to that, then he will self-pollinate with F1 and then cross-pollinate as well, and that creates F2. That way you can see recessive and dominant traits. So if we look at a dominant trait, a trait that shows up in generation and masks all other traits. So this is F. So your first generation that is pollinated is going to be dominant. So the dominant shows more often than anything else. Now recessive is a trait that did not show up, that had disappeared but will reappear in the next generation. So for instance, if you have blonde hair, but neither of your parents both your parents have brown hair, but your grandfather had blonde hair. So that's why you have blonde hair, because it is a recessive trait that gradually went on. So for instance, my wife has blonde hair, blue eyes, and both her parents have brown eyes and brown hair. That means that she got that from her grandparents, because her grandparents on one side, one of them had blue eyes and one of them had blonde hair. Thus, she got the recessive traits. The law of segregation is a pair of factors that separate during formation of gametes. So remember, gametes are your sex cells. So each sex cell receives one factor of traits, and then the dominant trait will overgrow. So if we look at this, so parent generation, we have your dominant must be the yellow pea, and recessive is the green pea. Because once it self-pollinates, it will show that recessive trait in the 3-to-1 ratio. So that's how he gets this. He uses the system called a Punnett square. So it shows that there is a possibility that when you have a recessive trait available, that 1 out of every 4 could show up recessive. And that's how Punnett squares work. So for instance, we have our homozygous dominant, meaning it is AA, or however you want to put it, capital letter, capital letter. Heterogeneous is capital letter, lowercase letter, and then homozygous recessive means that you are going to have lowercase, lowercase. And that's how we look at our Punnett squares. On your quiz, I'll give you a couple of Punnett squares. So if we look at this one, this is a larger one. So we have one that's capital letters, one with lowercase, or capital, lowercase, lowercase, capital, lowercase, lowercase. And so by putting them together, we'll be able to match A with A and B with B. And gradually you'll see what the offsprings would look like in a dihybrid cross example. So there are mutations in this process because, like we said with mitosis, is that only about 1 out of every 10,000 has a mutation, but a mutation is possible. So the loss of a chromosome due to breakage, inversion, which is mutation of a portion of a chromosome, breaks off. Translocation, in which a chromosome breaks off and reattaches to a different chromosome. Non-injunction, which is the mutation when a chromosome fails to separate from its pair. And then you have monosomal, missing a 46. Trisomal is which the recessive gets an extra chromosome. Down syndrome. Genetic counseling is a form of medical guidance that informs parents about these problems. Like I said, quick one today. We're going to make this 7A. It will go with your 5 questions. Those 5 questions will be on your final test. So just to let you know, you might want to use this as a study time. Watch this video, finish it up, you're good to go.